Welcome to the Thresholds of Reality. This is the podcast where we explore unexplained and mysterious events, phenomena, and legends. Today we are joined by Archbishop Ronald Enright, an exorcist with the Catholic Church, and he's a member of the Sacred Order of Saint Michael Archangel. Right? Did I say that right?
Yes.
So strap in as we explore the edges of the unknown. Archbishop Ron, thank you so much for joining us. I got to say that this is kind of a particular joy for me. I am a somewhat religious person. Kyle is kind of anti-religious, I would say. So it's nice to get kind of my side of things for once, instead of always Kyle's side. He's always got, he really connects with the secular guests. And I really like to connect with the spiritual religious guests. So really appreciate you coming on.
Sure.
Tell us about the Sacred Order of Saint Michael Archangel. How did you become involved with that?
Well, this is going to take me back a few years, okay? In the mid-1970s, I have received holy orders and was ordained into the priesthood. In 1979, I was elevated to bishop-elect, that's voted within the church. In 1982, I was consecrated as a Catholic bishop. And it was at that time, in 1982, I established within the Catholic jurisdiction of the Sacred Order of St. Michael the Archangel, I established the Order of Exorcist. And back then, and this is like 1982, probably way before you guys were born, we established the Order of Exorcist, and we started recruiting people, clergymen, into the ministry of exorcism. And back then, it wasn't really that popular per se, but and quite a few clergymen would actually shy away from, because this is involving the dark side of life, and behind most pulpits, the pastor or preacher would be sharing and preaching the gospel. Very, very few pastors or preachers will actually preach on demons and how you are a target, since being a child of God, born in his image. Satan and all the demonic entities that are in this world will actually look at you as a target. And so as a result, the battle of good versus evil goes on. The Order of Exorcists now has priests and bishops in 24 countries around the world. We've been around for a very long time. And even in my late age of, I'm 70 years old now, I'm still amazed that I'm still around. I guess God has other things in mind for me. I thought my mission was over, but no, that's when you're in this type of ministry, you're never, ever finished, okay? Because, this is not like a job where you apply for. This is a calling. And in our view, it's a divine calling.
So let me ask you, the basis for exorcisms dates all the way back to Bible times. There's a passage about legion in the New Testament.
Sure.
And you hear Christ discuss the process, and he says, "This kind goeth not out except by fasting and prayer." How much of the work that you do as an exorcist is based in Scripture, or is there other sort of experimental practice to it, or is it already the protocol already prescribed ahead of time?
Well, this, as I said, is a calling. I received my calling through a very supernatural event that occurred in my life. I was about 11 years old. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. That gives you any hint in regards to my accent. 11 years old. I'm in the shower in my bathroom in Brooklyn, and this very bright light shines through the bathroom window. In fact, it was so bright it illuminated the entire room. So much so that I remember closing my eyes. Then I closed my eyes for about 30 seconds because it was so bright. And as I closed my eyes, I actually saw myself many, many years later as a priest in some capacity in a church. And then I opened my eyes, and very slowly, as if it was a thick, thick white substance, cloud, if you will, just simply vacuumed right out of the window. And then from that point on, I started looking at life from a different perspective. I started seeing things that actually would fall into the supernatural realm, if you will.
Okay.
Even in my early years, in the Catholic Church, we have a ceremony. It's first, we have Holy Communion, the first Holy Communion, then we have confirmation.
Doctor's office.
I'm so sorry. I get calls 24 hours a day.
I'm sure.
Normally, it's from my clergy that are, far off places. I'll share a story with you if you like in regards to that one episode. But let me get back to to my early churchhood.
Yes, you're describing kind of the sacraments.
It was this was confirmation, and I was there with my mother. I was about 10 years old, 11 years old. I approached the rail. In front of the church there's a rail, and then the priest comes with a host, a chalice, and he takes the host out, which is the little wafer. And as he approached me, he stumbled, and the wafer just flew out of his hands. And my mother, rest her soul, she passed away quite a few years ago. She was brought up in a Catholic school. The nuns actually raised her. It was during the Depression days, way back when, and she believed in the supernatural. She was very, very religious, and as a result, she asked me, and she said, "Ronnie, I've never seen this type of thing occur before. This is really very strange. Do you know anything, or what? Do you have any feelings as to what just took place?" And I was just as amazed as she was because, everything was just now coming out. Things were coming out and becoming more and more clear to me as I continued my path. Throughout my life, I've had so many supernatural things take place. And then when I received holy orders, became ordained into the priesthood, and then a few years later, consecrated as a bishop, things started really happening. But when I chose the ministry of exorcism, that's when things really started happening. And I started really seeing strange and bizarre things. And I'm going to kind of give you a summary as to what, because, this would take forever for me to tell you the story in detail. I will tell you that I wrote a book, and and what a great, segue. Okay. This is my book. Okay. And it's called the Exorcist Secret Journal. And
Well,
so,
I like that. It's a great title.
it's my whole story's in there, along with some interesting facts about exorcism and people who actually have or demonstrate symptoms of demonic possession. In our organization, we have 3 psychiatrists. We work very closely with the mental health community. And so when we take on a case, and that is an individual would have to contact our organization. Our website is www.orderofexorcist.com. I'll probably send you some links if you like. You could also attach that to this interview. But I will tell you that people contact our organization, and when they contact us, they request our assistance. And so, and we have so many people that are in need that we don't have as many clergy, qualified clergy, or teams that can go out and actually um, help the individual. What we do is we do an assessment. We send our investigators out to the individual. We require the first interview, and I designed it's a what we refer to as the process. It's an interview where we could understand where the victim is coming from. We take a physical profile, a mental profile, and also we look at the manifestations that may be taking place within the person's environment. Whether if the person is claiming to have symptoms of demonic possession, we fill out a report, and it's actually a questionnaire, 60 questions, and we ask them about their situation. They tell us and give us the answers to our questions. And then once our investigators take and consolidate all the assessment reports along with recordings and things of this nature, they're submitted to my office. And then once I receive the assessment report, I send it off to our psychiatrist. We have, as I said, we have three. Actually, one passed away recently. But we send the reports, and the psychiatrist would make an assessment as to whether or not the person is demonstrating some form of psychosis, and or if it's just a very odd type of scenario where he cannot come up with a diagnosis. And if that be the case, he would give me his recommendations. I would read, his material as he, gives us the recommendations, and I make a decision as to whether or not we should actually go on, move forward, and actually assign an exorcist to the case. The exorcist would be a clergyman, and it would be appointed within the jurisdiction of wherever that case would happen to be. As I said, we have members who are in 24 countries around the world, and if let's say if the case came from India, and so we would do the assessment, of course. We'd examine the individual, the recordings, the tapes. We'd get the consulting from our psychiatrist who'd give us his notes, and then the bishop that is in India, that would be his jurisdiction. I would refer him and make my suggestions that he should go on with the ritual. And at that point, the bishop in India would get one of his priests who has been appointed an exorcist and assign him to the case. And then he would go out along with his team, and they would perform an exorcism. And that's basically what we're just all about in a nutshell, if you will.
So what are the kind of questions that you guys ask? Because I know what you're doing is you're trying to see, you're building a psychological profile of the person, of their state of mind based on these questions. But what kind of questions are on this 60?
Well, it's basically in three sections. Okay, it's the mental aspect of the individual, the mental profile, the which should include the psychological profile as well, his health profile. And the reason for that is there's a lot of things, even psychologically, that can mimic demonic possession. So there's a very fine line there. We have to make sure we make the right call. The whole reason for the assessment is to find out what type of demonic issue we're dealing with. If it is a solely psychological issue, well, then we address it accordingly. If it's not, we see some type of physical manifestation take place, even there at the first initial interview, we would act immediately. And when I say immediately, unfortunately, it's not like the following day. The whole process takes between 3 to 6 months. And it takes so long because we're dealing with other outside agencies. For example, the psychiatrists that we have, they would give us their response after they do their examination and research on the individual. And at that point, when we get the report, it could take any time. When we're looking at the victim or their family would have to furnish us with a physical and psychological profile. And then again, that's a third entity. A third party gets involved. So we have to wait until their therapist, psychiatrist, or doctor sends us the report. And that goes in with our assessment report. And so, I mean, there's a whole long process involved. We can't do it like overnight.
So it's
And the
not
reason
like
we can't do it
lead
overnight,
time.
okay, there's a good reason, and I'm going to tell you why we can't do it overnight or like within a week or whatever. If we make the wrong call
Mhm.
and the person has some form of psychosis, he's delusion, and as a result, if that be the case, then we would be feeding into his delusion, and as a result, it could lead to suicide at that point because we're giving him so much attention and we're validating what he believes to be true in his situation. And the reality is it just might be just a simple psychosis, and there's nothing simple about psychosis,
Yeah.
but the point I'm trying to make is it's not demonic. Now there are different types of scenarios. There could be a demonic oppression, and demonic oppression is when, as our belief system calls, and the way we recognize it as such, is when a dark entity or demon, Satan, places a seed in somebody's mind, subconscious mind, and convinces the victim, the person, that it's bad behavior. His bad behavior or lifestyle is something natural. It's coming from within. Has no clue that it's an outside agent. It's an outside entity, and the outside entity, of course, would be the demonic, placing that seed in the mind. And when that happens, then you'll see real negative behavior, like some people will demonstrate physical behavior where they are torturing themselves, maybe overindulging in substances. Maybe they become cutters. They start cutting their skins with razors. They start maybe violent behavior. Serial killers are products of this type of scenario. So, a lot of things could happen. So we're dealing with a very real entity. There are a lot of people that are skeptical. They may not believe that demons actually exist. And that's fine. But one point in your life, in anyone's life, somehow something will happen and it'll be very dark. And it could be very demonic. And then once you experience that and you recognize it for what it is, then your whole attitude will change. Half of the people in my organization, laity I'm referring to, who are investigators, half of them are skeptics. They've been skeptics from day one. And until they actually experience something that's supernatural, they can't explain. And then one or two things will happen when that occurs. They will either leave the organization, leave the team because they're scared to death, and as a result, it's very terrifying. It leaves a residual, a mark on your brain, and as a result, it's a very negative thing. You can't. It's like your worst nightmare becoming real, and almost like a 3D thing, and you're part of it, and you're saying, "Whoa, this is actually real," and you just can't believe it. But there are things that are, and that's another reason why exorcisms it's a very private, closed out to the public type of scenario, because so many things happen within the family unit. It's the worst experience that anyone could have, emotionally, physically, spiritually, even, and to a point, a lot of people actually who truly have a demonic experience will either, if they hold on and if they change their way of life and do all the right things, then they have a chance. But there's a good portion of people that will just drop the ball, and they'll either be driven to suicide or do something that's crazy that would be harmful to them physically as a result of having this kind of experience. It's a very quiet, closed, confidential type of scenario. Nobody wants to be exposed to the public at their worst. And just think, if you're exposed and that's in that sense, the whole world will actually see who you truly are. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know who each of us. I mean, each of us, we have our own different sides, if you will. And I'm sure there's a side of you that you would never ever want to expose to the world. Just think if the demonic was in and influencing your behavior, you would never want that to be exposed. So there's a lot of issues and a lot of things that are involved in this ministry of exorcism.
Yeah, it seems like the primary question would be, is it truly a demonic possession? And that a lot of work would go into establishing that. Do you have a statistic about how often someone who calls in about a possession turns out to actually be possessed?
I'll give you an example. I'm just going to give you like an example of, let's say, 10 calls. Out of 10 calls, we might have, let's make it 50 calls. Out of 50 calls, we may have maybe 2 out of the 50 that are actually genuine demonic possession. And even then, that takes an assessment. It takes a long way to just evaluate and make sure that's an actual case. If there's like what we refer to as a demonic infestation. A demonic infestation is when there are dark entities that are within your house or place of business. And as a result, certain things happen, and the demons have been allowed to come in through invitation. And if that happens, then you'll have all kinds of things happening in your house, things moving in your house, spontaneous fires are even known to happen. Many crazy things take place. And so it's a very interesting scenario.
So part of this makes me think about, what's the motivation behind the activities that these entities might go through? Because I'm reminded of like a movie, Thank You for Smoking, where the argument was that tobacco companies would not create a product that was bad for their consumers because they want them to keep buying the product. And if it's actually bad for them, then it kills them, and then we lose a consumer. Is there any kind of rationality there, or is it just
Sure.
trying to oppress this poor individual?
Okay, again, this would take me forever to explain this to you in detail for you to understand it. I'm going to give you a simple synopsis, okay? First of all, I'm going to take it from the very beginning, okay? God, we believe that there's a God, and God has these angels. And there was just one angel that God favored. And this one angel was beautiful. This one angel had everything. It was just totally talented, intelligent, was able to communicate with God the Father, and God loved this one angel. And this one angel became very proud and very proudful, and as a result wanted to have the status that God has, and God wouldn't have that. And as a result, this angel was an archangel. It was Lucifer. And so God decided to throw Lucifer out of heaven, and with him, Lucifer convinced 1/3 of the angels to go with him. Those 1/3 of the angels were fallen angels. The fallen angels are what we see today and identify today as demons. Okay, the whole plan of Satan's plan is to destroy mankind from the inside out, destroy God's creation. It's all part of being rebellious, and as a result, he wanted to destroy, mankind, God's creation.
Sure.
And so that's the only plan the demons have, and that's their only job is to introduce this darkness. Now, we as human beings, we are so curious, and we want to know. If part of our nature is we need to experiment and find out what's out there, and how we could better ourselves, as so it's kind of like the story of Adam and Eve, and the fruit that was the wisdom and the knowledge and everything. We're always chasing that apple. Okay, we want to know, we want to get all the wisdom, and as a result, people have allowed themselves, if they're not following the way of the cross and the way of Christ, if they're following and they know nothing about God, and they just part of the natural mind, if you will, they would want to know more to enlighten them, and all part of this enlightenment. Um, Great examples are these musicians who are in Las Vegas. The magical guys. The Chris Rocks and the
Oh yeah.
David Copperfield and all this. You see, they have unbelievable abilities. I mean, these illusions are not. They may not be illusions. They might be the real thing. Maybe they tapped into something dark. Um, so, I mean, if that be the case, about 40 years ago, I was in San Diego. I went to a convention, and David Copperfield was there, and he was giving a show, and I was right there in the front. And I was maybe 6 feet away from the stage, so I could see everything. And I saw David do some amazing things, levitation, for example. And of course, and I'm sure he has. I'm sure there are people out there who could simulate what he was doing, but to me, it was so hard to believe because I'm a skeptic to begin with, and I'm still a skeptic. That's why we have the assessments, for anyone saying that they have demonic issues. Well, we have to say, well, prove it to us, and we can't take your word. You have to prove, the evidence will come out if it's true. So I'm looking at David Copperfield, and he's doing his thing on stage, and I just couldn't believe. I was totally blown away. And then fast forward about 20 years after that, I was in Pasadena, and I was in this. It was an Oriental Japanese museum, and they were giving a show, and there were these individuals, these illusionists that were just amazing. They had their full attire, and they had this looked like a mask, and they would just turn their head like that, and their mask would change into another face. Now, in this case, I was only maybe 3 feet away. I was like, I wanted to actually see, and I couldn't explain it. And when it comes to a point, I mean, when you see something like that you can't really and truly explain, and other people are baffled, because it's just amazing. You have to come to the understanding that there are some things to this world that will never truly be explained. And then when you come to that point, then you have to understand that there are some real elements in the world. There are evil, dark entities that are just willing to give anyone the ability to develop or increase their abilities. If they're an empath, for example, they may want to further their abilities, and they may want to make a deal with the proverbial devil, as they say. These things are actually very real and very frightening, and so as a result, that's what we do. And that's what it's all about here.
So when you guys exorcise a demon, and you've gone through the process, you figured out this individual that we're dealing with is truly a demonic presence, has truly engulfed this person. When you exorcise them, do they just go back to hell and pick someone else, or
no? What happens, and this is solely scripture as well, and even this is where we get a lot of our answers. It's from the scriptures. Okay, the scripture says that it uses an individual, it uses a person who has been possessed, and once the demon is exorcised out of the person, driven out of the person, the demon goes off into the desert, and it goes on, and then it starts remembering and saying, "Why did I leave home? I was so comfortable." And so it looks around, and it decides to get 7 more demons, and they all come back to see if the house is still clean. If the house isn't clean, then it's going to move back in. If the house is clean and remains clean as a result of the exorcism ritual that was done, the demon will not come back. And therefore, they will go someplace else looking for other possible victims. See, the whole thing is that everything is explained in the scriptures, and it even says, it's really amazing. I mean, it gives us the answers that most people are curious about.
So, has there ever been the thing where the you move on to somebody else a number of years down the road, and that one goes, Ronald, it's you again. Like, I mean, is there
Oh
a
yeah,
chance that
sure. It's a funny thing. I'm talking to one of my priests, okay, and he's in the UK, and he's telling me we're talking about a case, and he wanted my input, and I said sure, and a third party comes on the line, and it was a really very harsh voice, gobbled voice, and a really filthy mouth, if I must be blunt. And he identified me by first name, and very few people know my first name when I'm talking to, I'm not using a party line, okay, but this is a third person that came on the line and started, like, saying a lot of negative things about each of us, the priest I was talking to and myself, and bringing up a lot of interesting personal issues. Believe it or not, I was a little startled. The priest that I was talking to in the UK, he hung the phone up. And about a few seconds later, I did the same. But then we thought about it, and it's interesting. This is before we had internet, by the way. It's like, many moons ago. It's hard to believe that there was a time when internet wasn't around and this type of communication wasn't around. But it does bring me, if you want to hear a really interesting story, and this happened, and I'll try to make it quick. I was communicating, and this was one of our priests in the Philippines, and he sent me an assessment report along with a CD, the videos of the actual interview, some of the physical evidence, okay, and as a result, I'm looking at it. Now the thing is that all this information was given to me, and it was a month old. It was given to me 30 days after the actual initial interview. So, okay, so if you could follow me, okay, it's a month later, I'm looking at the assessment report. And as I'm looking at it, I'm viewing it on my screen. And I have a very large, screen where I could actually see things. When you get to be a certain age, you have to have things big in order to see. So I went really close to the screen to kind of trying to figure out what the heck it was, because I could see the investigator asking questions to the victim, and the victim, of course, was the person who claimed to be possessed. So he's talking and he's answering the question. So I'm looking, and then I noticed something on the screen. It was like kind of a dark, fuzzy thing moving from one side of the screen to the other very slowly. It started moving from the right side slowly to the left. And so I just figured, it's part of maybe some kind of video, problem or something, or something on the other end. Well, in any case, I just simply dismissed it as, a technical glitch, if you will. And then as I'm looking and listening to the interview, I saw this fuzz again and started moving from the left side of the screen to the right, very slowly. It got my attention, but then I just totally ignored it. About the third time, it slowed down and went very slowly. And I'm staring at it. I'm going, what the heck is that? And I went really close. This has never happened before to me. I mean, this is the first time in my 46 years, okay, never happened before. I looked close. I looked really close to see what the heck. My face was about maybe 3 or 4 inches away from the screen. And I'm staring at this fuzzy thing, and it stops right as I put my nose up against the screen, and this fuzzy thing starts expanding and getting larger and larger. I'm going, so what happens is I felt like an impulse, like an energy force just pushing me from my stuff, pushing me backwards like about 3 or 4 feet. And I'm going, and my chair has wheels, obviously. And it took me, it pulled my breath away. I had to really understand and try to figure out what the heck just happened. And then it came to me, okay, darkness, demons, as well as angels, they're out of our time and space. they're not in our time and space. So as a result, they have no rules to follow. There's no criteria. They could just pass from one room to the next in a matter of seconds, and it could be in our frame where it could be 1,000 years. It's like a second for these entities to go from one place to another. Well, this report was submitted, and I was looking at it, and it was done 30 days ago. So what I was viewing is the actual interview that was, that I was actually viewing and seeing for the very first time. And then when this thing interfered with and became very centered in place, got my attention and so on. What happened was I was actually viewing the interview in real time. That is, that the view itself, since the darkness demon was inside and within the environment, it came and it was right there. Now, I don't know if I'm making this as clear as I could be, because it's
no, we get what you're saying.
You understand?
Yep.
This demonic entity came in real time as I was viewing the assessment that took place 30 days ago. Since demons could walk through time and space, and they're not subject to any of the things that we're subject to, since they have that ability, that's exactly how I could explain this whole scenario. It walked into my space of existence at this time. And so as I'm looking at an assessment 30 days ago, I was watching it real time as I saw the demonic and felt the demonic come out of the screen and pushed me back. And that's how I explain it to this very day, because that's exactly what happened. And
I mean, that had to be freaky, even knowing what you know and experienced everything that you've experienced. It's still got to be intimidating and freaky at times when you're not ready for it, and it seems to happen.
Every situation is totally different. Okay, you could do like in my earlier days, I was doing 3 to 4 exorcism rituals a day.
Wow.
Okay, and that's every day, and that was so. And I very rare. Well, I think I would take off on a Sunday, but that would be very rare because I'd still have church to do. So it was really like a 7-day thing. So and as that went on for many years, every single ritual is totally different. Every person is different. We have different personalities. Okay, different demonic personalities, just like there are different personalities that we have as a human being has. So it's very interesting. So you have to address it for what it is, and you have to make an evaluation and see whether or not what you're dealing with is real. And if it's not from someone's imagination, or maybe someone who may be wanting the attention of an organization like such as ours. So you have to really do your diligence to make sure that you're dealing with the genuine article. And as I said, majority of the time we have to refer people to other sources like mental health agencies or counseling or things of this nature. And it's no longer at least not in our view, it's no longer a spiritual matter.
So we've had other guests on talking within the realms of this subject, and I noticed a thing in common with a lot of others is there's rules that these demons and stuff have to go by. Is that something that's true, that there's these unknown to us rules, but there's actual rules that they have to abide by? Or there is no rules, they can kind of just do what they want? Or like,
I'm going to say, since I don't really have a mind of a demon, but I could probably give an educated guess and say that they have no rules. When they're confronted with God Himself, of course they fear even the presence of God, and as a result, there's power there. They know they need to exit. You mentioned a legion of demons that you heard in the Bible. You read somewhere in the Bible. Well, that was a miracle that Christ did. I'm going to call it a miracle. It was an exorcism, and this person came out of a cave, and he was like, half naked and bleeding and literally falling apart. And but he recognized Christ as the Son of God and just stopped in his tracks. And I'm paraphrasing. The person who was possessed by the demon said, "We know who you are," you know, and they were very frightened. And then the direction went to all the pigs that were in the other side of the of that area there, and so the demon said, "Please, just drive us into the swine," and that's exactly what Christ did, and said, "Leave," and they all left, and they all went into the swine, and the swine, they all went
They all go
right
crazy,
over the cliff,
run into the ocean.
and that was it. Yeah, and that was a really interesting story, but it's very, very, very real. Yeah.
I got another question, Sam. One more question, I swear. Sam, I know Sam's got a bunch written down. So, you talked that the demons are always trying to kind of throw a wrench in God's plan with us, and that's why they're around and stuff. Why? How do I put this? Why is it taken so long? We have been around for a while. Don't you think that their plan would have eventually worked, or God would just said, "Forget this. I'm done with all of it. Forget all of you"?
Well, you have to remember, God is outside of time and space. 1 second in God's world or God's space can be 100 million years in our time. Okay, we're just a little speck. Okay, we're just we're so.
We're a blip.
In terms, yeah, that's a good term. We're a little blimp in the radar, if you will. The universe is so massive in terms of space, and we are just passing through. This is just a thing that we're going through. God created us in love, and as a result, if we follow and live a good life and so on, we'll see God one day. But meantime, we could experience God's presence in the way we live and the way we treat each other, and just being good, staying within the light. Or we have a choice. God loved us that much; He gave us that choice. We could stay in the darkness, or we could seek evil things, or we could seek to be evil and to allow the dark entities to come in and dictate our behavior. So, He's given us that choice. But in terms of God's time, God doesn't have time. God's been in the very beginning. There's no beginning, there's no end. God has always been. Okay, He's outside our framework of time and space. And this is it's very, very difficult to understand and comprehend, because it's beyond, it's beyond our human understanding. It's more of a spiritual understanding. And even then, that's very hard to articulate, because it just is.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's hard to wrap your mind around the fact that everything you just said.
Yeah,
that there's this all-loving creature that doesn't have, it's a lot to put your eggs in that basket, so to speak. So I get that.
There's the small percentage that we deal with that are genuine cases. These people are really they're really torn, and they're suffering, and they're in agony, and because they're dealing with all the things that you've probably seen in the movies and stuff. They're feeling their flesh being torn, or they can feel themselves just expanding to a point where it's like there's no end. If good point. This is kind of funny. I'm a person that loves to eat.
You and me both.
In fact, I love Italian food, so there you have it. And when you eat, and sometimes I can't stop eating because I just love my lasagna, of course. And so I'll have, super big portion of lasagna. I'll eat and I'll eat and and even I'm still full and I'll still eat. And I don't do this as often as I used to, but I will eat because it tastes so good. But then after you've eaten like maybe a half a loaf of lasagna, you're sitting in your chair, you're so stuffed, you feel so bloated, and you feel so uncomfortable. And you say, "Gosh, it was so fun to get there," but to get to 30, no, it's like, oh, uncomfortable. If you could imagine being bloated up to that point, and being uncomfortable physically, that's how it feels at the very best when a person has some form of demonic issue. The body feels uncomfortable because it's not the same. It's
Mhm.
it's something that you've allowed to come into your system. In this case, in terms of consumption, I don't know. That's probably a
So, what are ways
terrible
that?
analogy, but
No. I understand it. I got it. What are some ways? Like, okay, this is going to be a two-part question. So the first part is, how does one get to that point where they've invited this in? And second, do you see it more in overly religious people or non-religious people, or maybe there's no preference, maybe it's, but like, what are?
well, you have to understand that the darkness, Satan, is the ruler of this world. He's in charge. God gave him this domain, okay, and
Well, that was
he's
very
given
nice of him.
us as believers, as followers, if you will. He gave us the choice to stay and live in the light and follow, the path that he's etched out for us, and we follow the scriptures and we try to live a good life and so on. And of course, as Christians, we believe in Jesus Christ. John 14:6, Jesus said, "For I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me." So we have our whole belief system based on that. So if we keep following the path, then we're fine. But darkness is all over. We're like walking a tightrope. Okay, the tightrope is only about maybe a half an inch thick, and but the length is real far, and on both sides there's darkness. If we should happen to trip or happen to lose our balance and fall into darkness, we're going to experience all the horrible things in life, where pain is part of our scenario, um, where we find ourselves doing things that would be totally despicable. We'll be hurting ourselves and other people as a result because we kind of lost our balance and fell towards either the right or left side. It's all darkness, and the only thing that's light is our path. That's that string that's maybe a half an inch wide, and we're doing our best to keep our balance. But it's darkness is all around us, and it's easy. Darkness is it. We become influenced by the things that we see, by the things that we read, by even the darkness has so much to promote that's so attractive to us. And all we want to do is we want to be happy, we want to enjoy life, we want to live to the fullest, we want to really enjoy ourselves, but sometimes we lose touch as to whether or not we're on that string path or we lost our balance and we're being manipulated by the darkness. Satan, the demons, darkness, demon, Lucifer, whatever name you like to place in the terms of the darkness, um, Satan is a liar. Everything that you see is an illusion, and it's very easy to be tricked and manipulated into darkness. It takes a lot of effort to keep your eyes both open and keep your eyes focused on the light, and understand that that path is the path you need to travel, because every other path uh, could be horrible, could be devastating. And if you want the this whole I hope I'm not preaching. I'm just talking.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, I'm just saying that we believe that there are two things that have to coexist, and there's no denying the two things that have to coexist is dark and light, good and evil. They have to coexist. If evil was not in place, then how would you know if you fall and fall off that rope that I was referring to? If good wasn't around and evil was the only thing around, then there'd be nothing to measure it by. You have to have the both the two elements to exist and to coexist. And so that's the reality of life. And the thing is, most of us will be totally oblivious to the spiritual things. And the haunted houses and stuff, we're entertained in the movies and stuff like that. But when we're talking about demonic infestation, there's no joke there. It's not fun. It could be very, very troublesome. It could be even deadly. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that we have to confront and push on with.
So one of our viewers in the live chat, Darth Lopez, says when he was sleeping as a child, he looked up and saw what he considered a demonic figure on a cross and two others sitting next to it. And he was wondering if you had any sort of interpretation or insight that you could provide as to that experience.
Well, if he gave a little more detail, like was he paralyzed at the time? Did he feel? Was he able to move, or was it a dream? Or was he awake?
He rolled over like a champ and went back to sleep.
Well, well, I really can't make any reading to that. He saw a demon on a cross. Well, okay. And demons are all around us. If you see them, then you're just one of those selective few who can. But they are all around us.
Because in one of our group chats, he's actually like, he wonders if stuff like that has
influenced his choices in life.
Yeah, like gangs, drugs, stuff that he had done while he was growing up. If maybe seeing that, having that demonic presence there began something or helped influence him to push into a path, or.
Well, the thing is that temptation is all around us, and it's a lot more fun to be tempted and doing crazy things and having and enjoying yourself, at least for that short time, than understanding that there are consequences, and everyone's accountable to all their actions, spiritually or even in our natural world. We're responsible for everything that we do. There are consequences. Anything that may have influenced them as a child, it's possible. They say from the age from 1 to 7, those are your most impressionable years, and that actually formed your personality, based on the negative and the positive information that that's given to you at those early years. And then once your personality is formed, well, then in regards to your earlier information, it just simply depends, how you're raised and what type of environment you're raised in. So if it's a negative, dark environment, the odds are you're going to be a negative, dark person. If you have parents who are dark and who are really into doing things like I don't know, maybe S&M or something. How's that for being dark?
Wow, here we go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the odds are it's probably going to be an influence in your childhood, and then you're probably going to grow up with similar. For example.
Do you notice that the time, like, it seems like we're coming to an age of people being less religious and not believing in that? is there a correlation to that and like how the world around us seems to be increasing in like rage and hostility, and is that like
I see a lot
as
of that. I see a lot of that, these days. Yeah, I say within the past few years, it's been really, oh my gosh. I mean, and I'm not just talking about our country. I'm talking about around the world.
yeah,
Things have
no,
become
that's what I mean. Like even on my in my own driving down the road in my own block in my own state in my own city, like I've noticed this like increase of like negative energy. Is it? It's Do you think it has to do with the fact of so many more people, and you're finding less people not as religious as they were, say, in the 50s or so, or in that since that is growing, it's feeding this, these entities that are here and helping them kind of be around. Have you seen like an increase of like calls and or is there less now, or is there?
I think there is an increase in a lot of things. There's an increase in knowledge. We're increasing in knowledge, and the more knowledge that we have, the more things that will be would be very tempting in regards to you know to the negative. I think that there's more negative influences out there than anywhere else at this time and age because of our technology. Everyone has access to the internet, and as a result, more things, and especially young people, can be viewing things on the internet that could be very negative, and that could be actually very devastating to their, to their very outlook in life, if you will. I think the suicides are probably the same as they were a couple of 100 years ago, but I think that there are more aggressive reporting stations that now are being shared, and people are being more apt to be open to that type of thing. And so suicides are up, drugs are up. People are trying to get away from all the sharp edges in life. Life is very painful, and people might feel, some people believe that it's better to sedate yourself and try to stay away from all the pain and try to avoid all the pain in the world. Unfortunately, that's not the right way to understand life, because life is all about growing. And in regards to the negative influences, those will always be out there, but there'll always be light, and there'll always be positive experiences out there. And I'm not in churches, in people, and the joy. I mean, there's so much joy in life. There's so many things that we're privileged to experience. If you like me and you like the taste of food, well, heck, your taste buds are a blessing. I can't. I think it would be pretty close to hell if a person had no taste buds, and they only had to chew food and swallow it, force themselves, but there was no taste to it. That would be terrible. I mean,
COVID. That happened to me in COVID, and it was miserable.
really. Oh my. Oh my! In fact, you talk about COVID. One of our psychiatrists, uh, he's in Miami, Florida. He passed away in 2020 because of COVID, and he was an MD, and he just thought he had a cold, so he ignored all the other, signs and so on, and he actually passed away. And he was a young guy, like 56 years old or something. It's really sad. It's well, anyway, that's another form of what the negative influences. All that whole stuff is darkness. All that darkness, any disease like that, everything is darkness. Everything could be also prevented, if we make the right choices. And it's all about choice.
Yeah. Well, as now that we're kind of here at this religious part, I always have to share this little quip and get your take on it. Which is, the life of man proceeds in four phases. You believe in Santa, you don't believe in Santa, you are Santa, you look like Santa. And for me, at first, it was just kind of a funny little quip that I saw on the internet. But as I thought about it more and more, I realized Santa is another name for God. And so you kind of swap out the word Santa and it becomes quite profound. You believe in God, you don't believe in God, you are God, you look like God. And I really mulled over that idea of being God. Like, what does that mean? I mean, obviously, I am not God. I'm not the God. But what does that mean? In the Santa context, it means that if I know Santa's not coming down the chimney, my kids, they still need gifts. So I'm the one who has to don that role and be Santa. And I think the reason why people lose faith a lot of times is because there's those rules that we learn in our young phase of believing in Santa, believing in God. You know, you get presents if you're good, you get coal if you're bad, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. You know, sometimes people who do good things suffer a lot.
Yeah.
Like demonic possession can happen to church going people who are trying their best, and they can end up suffering a lot. And that can really try people's faith. Similarly, people who we know to do bad things can succeed in life. And instead of getting coal, they make a lot of money. And you look at that and you scratch your head, well, how can God allow such things? But it shouldn't stop there. You have to keep, like, if people are suffering, somebody's got to step up and do what needs done. You know, you have to go in and take care of the needs of others. And that's what I think it means to be Santa or to be God, is that you step up and you take responsibility.
Yeah.
And eventually you look like God means that you inspire others. And I think that's what it means. I don't know. What's your take?
I like that. I mean, everything you just said was really, it's a really good, interesting thing to think about. But yeah, you know, you should want all the positive things in life, and all the negative things come real easy, but the positive things you may have to work for. But one thing you don't have to work for is the love of God. God, John 3:16, God loved us so much he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. As a result, you know, we're promised all these wonderful things. And once you understand and start accepting the real positive things in life, you start seeing things. Your eyes will start opening and you'll start understanding. You're no longer existing in this tunnel vision type of scenario, but you could see everything. You have a complete sight all around. Your eyes have been opened. Your perspective is open. You understand that love will bring love. Hate will bring hate. I heard somewhere the Old Testament, an eye for an eye. I heard somewhere, well, if you take the eye for an eye and go by that, you'll be blind.
Everyone's blind.
No. So, and I said, yeah, that's kind of true. So what you put out there, you could expect to get back. If you are good and you have an open mind and an open heart, be very optimistic and just understand that everything in life will not always be easy, but everything in life is here and we could benefit from everything that God has given us. And it's best to live a life of light than to stumble in the dark. Because in this world of ours, this world has a lot of sharp edges. And it's like walking into a dark room where glass is shattered all over the floor and you're just bare feet and you're walking across that dark room. And that's exactly how it is in the world. You know, the point is that you should have, when you walk into a room, you should always have the lights on because, you know, you want to avoid all those sharp edges. And the same thing in life, avoid those sharp edges and stay in the light. Okay. And again, not to sound too religious, but from a Christian Catholic perspective, I'd say that Jesus Christ is the only way to actually have that light in your life. And once you have that, you'll be really happy and you'll be able to breathe in and breathe out slowly. And just enjoy everything around you.
It would be asking a lot for an archbishop not to be religious, I would say. I think that would be asking a lot. So, no, you're fine. Thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody, I pulled up I'm going to share your Order of Exorcists website. So everybody check out orderofexorcist.com. It's just orderofexorcist.com. There's no the necessary. You can get the Archbishop's latest book on Amazon. It pulled up in a different, but it's The Exorcist Secret Journal, Concealed Cases of Diabolical Activities and Demonic Possession by Archbishop Ronald, and is it Feyl? Is that how you say?
Feyl, right? Correct.
Feyl Enright. And Archbishop Ron, thank you so much for joining us today. If anybody liked our content today, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate everybody in the chat who shared their thoughts, especially Darth Lopez for begging. Like he was banging on the door. He wanted us to make sure that we talked about that. But we appreciate everybody. And until next time, keep on exploring the edges of the unknown.